I want to turn to the next segment of this conversation. It's a really wonderful one, in my opinion, because it's called the call to action. We've filled this time with so much information, from lived experiences to learned perspectives and to technical details about how this work gets done. And that is understandably a lot to absorb in a single setting. And so I hope that this call to action that you'll hear from each of us offers you an opportunity to crystallize on these learning experiences through the perspectives of our wonderful panelists. And you'll even get a guest cameo from your classmate, Marion, in a moment here. But first, I want to hear from the panelists for your call to action. And I'll just go around the metaphysical room. And I would love to start with Jorge, if you wouldn't mind, Jorge.
And clearly, we're all doing this work on different fronts from across the nation. And so I will say my call to action is that we can't do this alone. It takes tremendous effort to continue to triage the urgency of the needs of our LGBTQ youth and our LGBTQ people. And so I would say get involved in whatever organization is closest to you. Now, obviously, I could say, please donate to Smile, and also please donate to Smile, smyal.org/donate. But also, there are a lot of organizations across the nation that are doing this work that are now under scrutiny constantly because of the legislation that's moving forward. So please support them. And then also, I'll add, ask them how you can support them. Sometimes like folks will email us and they're like, we'd love to volunteer. And I'm like, okay, like then I have to create a volunteering opportunity. So I would say, ask them what would be helpful for us to do. They will tell you exactly this, we need X, Y, and Z. And so reach out to them and get that support. We cannot do this without the generous support of everybody who is on this panel, but also like participating and here today to listen to these messages. Like it's a first step in a ripple of social action that goes across the nation.
Thank you, Jorge. Lee, would you care to enlighten us with your call to action? I know we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So one of the themes that we've heard tonight, unfortunately, is that so many states are trying to erase and eradicate LGBTQ youth. And so we can't let that happen, right? Like LGBTQ people, and particularly trans youth, are a small minority of the population, and us with our voices alone is not going to be enough to kind of beat this back. And so we need allies. And what that can look like is like, think about how you can be vocal and take action to support LGBTQ youth. Like Jorge said, money goes a really long way, in supporting the efforts to battle these bills on the ground, to support the youth themselves, to finance the litigation. That's not all, right? So the money, you've got time, educate yourselves, follow, LGBTQ folks on social media, learn about them, see like what's going on. And they'll also kind of flag a lot of points of action, right? Like last week was Trans Week of Action. And so there was a lot of things happening. And, if you're following people on social media, you can see that going on. Speak about these issues at your dinner table with your family, with your friends, talk about it, kind of push back on people that don't agree with you, but also just make it clear that you are that safe space for people. Because like I said, you don't know who's listening. And I think just don't let these issues and these people be erased, right? Like you shine light on it, lift it up. The ACLU filed this great amicus brief, and it was just really about trans joy. And it's trans adults talking about their success in life and their joy in life. And like, let's lift that up as well in these really dark times.
Again, and unsurprisingly, so well said. I couldn't agree with you more. As I hope to have explicated earlier in our conversation, the very nature of queer liberation and of equality for queer folks is a two-sided coin. And on the one side, there are these unfortunate dark moments, but on the other is the resiliency that Alana spoke to earlier, and an unwillingness to remain in a status quo that subjugates us for our basic humanity. And that pride and that resiliency and that joy is something to celebrate and lift up. And speaking of Alana, I would love to hear from you next.
Absolutely. You mentioned in the very beginning that I'm the board chair of the Equality Federation, and I haven't talked much about them, but I want to hear. The Equality Federation is a federation of all of the organizations like Equality Ohio that exist across the states. Most states have an organization like us. Some actually have two. So my call to action tonight is please get to know your state equality organization. We are the entities that are fighting on the front lines of the State House for policy change. Find your state equality organization. Please join their mailing list for their actions. Listen to them, take their lead in what actions are needed in your state, and then please donate to those organizations. There is a misconception out there that LGBTQ work is somehow extremely well funded. I am telling you, we barely get by. My opposition in our state just got a $5 million influx from individual donations. We have never seen money at that level. So truly, this is something that every donation matters, no matter what its size is. And every call to your legislator, when they give you that action that says, call your legislator, you may be picking up the phone and say, my call doesn't matter. It does. There is a legislative aid there tallying for or against, and we need as many on the side that your state organization is asking for as possible.
Thank you so much, Alana. And to your last point about voicing your opinions, I would just remind folks, Google is your friend when it comes to finding who is elected to represent you in a particular office, whether it's the local, the state, or the national level. And every single one of those people has someone on their payroll whose job it is to have a phone number that you can call to say exactly what Alana just explained. So my call to action was going to be to encourage you all to open up your wallets and your pocketbooks. But our lovely panelists in more ways than one kind of covered that for us. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit to framing sort of issues as I opened this conversation. My call to action and my framing issue has to do with listening, and namely about doing more of it and speaking less. I think that there is a lot of value to be had in just keeping quiet, not saying anything, and just listening and learning. Being quiet is free of charge. It costs us nothing. And yet listening and being quiet is tremendously valuable. And that is especially true when we're engaging with people whose lived experiences differ from our own. That's a tremendous learning experience. And we have so much more to lose when we speak without listening than when we listen without speaking. So I encourage us all, myself included, to do more listening without speaking than we do speaking without listening. And I'm willing to bet that if we do that, and if we donate to these wonderful organizations, we can each play a meaningful part in making tomorrow better than today for queer young people. And with that, I want to turn it back to your wonderful classmate, our gracious host of sorts, Marion. Marion, I believe, also has a call to action to share with us, and I would love to hear it too.
I have a call to action, but first, before I do, I want to thank all of you for this such beautiful, heartfelt, and wonderful information. I just feel overwhelmed and so grateful. My call to action is an invitation because Class Act is a partner of Justice Aid, which was founded by our classmate, Steve Milliken. And Justice Aid is presenting 2 events in New York in May, and I'd like to invite all of you to attend them. And the first is the Justice Aid Spring Forum at the Riverside Church on May 15th, and it's called Erasure, the Otherization of Queerness. And the second is Justice Aid Spring Concert Benefit, Bessie, Empress of the Blues at City Winery in Manhattan. So and that's on the 16th of May. So make a trek to New York if you aren't there already, and join us all for those extraordinary events. And all of the money that comes from those goes directly to SMILE. 100% of donations to Justice Aid this year go to SMILE and their extraordinary work. For full information, go to the Justice Aid website.